Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Joelle Simone Anthony. I am also known as the Grave Woman. If this is your first time visiting my channel, I'd like to ask that you please hit the subscribe button and become a subscriber, in addition to also hitting the notifications bell so that you can be made aware anytime that I upload a new video. So today I am basically going to go through and answer about 4 or 5 questions that I received from the 12 days of birthday giveaway that Little Miss Funeral and I did a few weeks ago. So I'm just going to scroll through and randomly select a few questions. If your question has not been answered yet, be patient. I will get to it as soon as I can. I'm just really busy and trying to balance a lot. So when I have time to record these videos, I will. And if I don't do a video response, I will do my best to answer your question in the original comment section on the original video. So my first question for the day comes from Tori, and I'm not even gonna try to pronounce your last name because I don't want to butcher it. But your question basically states, I work in funeral service as a director and embalmer, so I don't have any questions for you wonderful ladies, but I would love to know what strength you find is most important working in the profession. So basically, Tori, the thing that I think is the biggest strength would be the ability to remain open-minded. In this industry, as a funeral service professional, you're going to work with so many different people of varying religions, cultures, ethnicities, backgrounds, and so many other factors. So the ability to remain open-minded and do your best to learn from the ability to remain open-minded and do my best to learn from each experience that I have is the biggest strength that I've found to be important in the funeral service industry. The next question comes from Christopher Arell, and he says, my question is, could someone have their best friend, wife, or sibling buried in their backyard if it was allowed by funeral arrangements? To be honest, Christopher, I've heard of this happening, but I think that's more of like a city and state zoning thing, more so than a funeral service thing. The funeral director's job is to make sure that by burying or when burying or funeralizing someone, that the law is not broken. That's one of our many jobs. So in order to do that, I think there's a special permit or a process that has to go through your court system and your zoning authority, and I have no idea what that process is. I can do some research and try to find out, but to give a honest answer, I don't know. Okay, the next question comes from Ashley Wilcox, and Ashley asks, what is the most fun or interesting thing a family has requested for their loved one's funeral service? I have to think about that. One thing that does come to mind is a funeral service that I worked when I was a family service counselor for a cemetery. I wasn't the actual funeral director, but the funeral home had worked with the family to basically have a really big celebration at the cemetery. And what was interesting about this family was that they were a family and belonged to a biker group. And a lot of times, this goes back to being open-minded, people have a stigma about biker groups being that, thinking that they're loud and violent and just really, over the top and aggressive. This was one of the sweetest families I've ever had the honor of working with. And when I tell you, we had a blast at that memorial service in the cemetery. I believe the deceased had passed away in a motorcycle accident. And of course, the family and friends and the community of bikers were sad, but it was just a great time. I feel like they really honored the essence of who the individual was. And I honestly had a great time at the cemetery during the memorial for the family. So that would have to be my answer for right now, but I will give it more thought and maybe do a video of maybe my top 10 funeral services that I've worked. Okay, the next question is from Angie Winks, and it reads, Good morning, ladies. My question is, how do you handle conflicting families when there is no death plan? What are the legal steps someone would have to take? Okay, so this is a question I get asked all the time, so thank you for asking, Angie. Working with a conflicting family is difficult, but it's really not that difficult, because when there is no plan in place, basically the arrangements are left up to the next of kin. And if there can't be a resolve between family members, I'll often direct my attention to the next of kin and ask what they want, because they are the person who legally has the right of disposition, meaning that they can make decisions about what happens to the deceased. And a lot of times when there's a conflict between the families, I'll excuse myself from the arrangement conference room and say something like, well, I'm going to give you all a few minutes to talk this over. If there can't be a resolve, the last resolve would be to involve the courts, which I'm pretty sure that you don't want to do. So in order to give you guys some time to think about what your final decisions are, I'm going to excuse myself and come back in 10, 15, 20 minutes. Or if you'd like, you can go home with the information that I've provided and contact me should you have any questions, and come back tomorrow to see if we can finalize some arrangements. A lot of times that will kind of put in the minds of the individuals that, okay, we really need to settle down or make some decisions. If a solution cannot come out of that alternative, the next option is to go to the court system, and that's completely out of my hands. If that's what the family chooses to do, my job is to make sure that their wishes are brought to life, so they have the freedom to do so. And a lot of times people will say something like, well, it's your job to figure it out. And honestly, it's not. It's the job of the next of kin and the family members making the arrangements. I've also had to ask people that weren't directly involved in the decision making, and by that I mean children, spouses, parents, to leave. Because sometimes when we're grieving, we seek the comfort of those who we're familiar with, and people will come to the funeral home in entourages, so to speak, or with an entourage. And sometimes I'll say, okay, in order to handle this situation as best possible, I'm going to need to speak to mom, dad, and children. Or if there is not a next of kin, the person paying for the final arrangements a lot of times gets the final say. But in most cases, it is the next of kin. And sometimes the next of kin can be 3 children who can't make a decision. They each have equal stake to the right of disposition. So again, I'll excuse myself or give them the option of going home and talking and thinking things over, or letting the courts handle the situation. And the final question that I'm going to ask today is going to be from Julie Finney. And Julie asked, how has working in the funeral industry changed your thoughts on how you want your own funeral handled? And if so, how? This is a really excellent question. Prior to becoming a funeral director, even when I was working in the cemetery, I thought I wanted this huge, elaborate, expensive funeral. To me, that represented love, and it represented the fact that, my family cared about me. And to be honest, you guys, now I'm not exactly sure what I want my final method of disposition to be. Actually, I am. I believe I want to be cremated. And I say that because cremation offers more alternatives. And I would hate to see, in my personal opinion, my loved ones spend all of this money to be put into the ground with the casket, the vault. I don't have anything against embalming. I would like a viewing, but I just don't want a huge, elaborate, expensive casket, or, a vault with my picture, name in rose gold. I just don't want all of that anymore. I would prefer a method of disposition that is more eco-friendly. And I would like to give my loved ones that I leave behind the option of doing something more personal with my remains, whether it be cremation jewelry, cremation art, or just, you know, I pray that I have several children. Maybe each of my children will want to keep a piece of me with them forever, in the form of my cremated remains. So it definitely has changed what I want. The reason it has changed what I want is because I've seen so many people spend these ridiculous amounts of money on funeral services, and I feel as if it's done so out of grief and sometimes out of guilt. Not saying that if you can afford to spend huge amounts of money on a funeral that something's wrong with that, but a lot of times the average person can't afford a $20,000 funeral and $5,000 on flowers and all of that. Another thing that I'd like to see happen, or that I desire to happen when I pass away, is that my friends and family travel in my honor every year. I did a Q&A on my Instagram not too long ago where I asked, what would you like done in your memory? And I got some really interesting responses, ranging from family dinners on their birthday, or, you know, just the family getting together at the graveside and telling funny stories. But for me, I'd like to see my loved ones and close friends take an annual trip. It doesn't necessarily have to be on my birthday, but just take a trip in my honor, because I love to travel. Thank you guys so much for watching. Again, if I have not gotten to your question already, I'm going to do my best to complete a video response to each and every question received. My name is Joelle Simone Anthony. Please subscribe, like, and comment if you haven't already. To learn more, visit www.thegravewoman.com. Live life, love hard, and I'll talk to you next time.